Good morning everyone, and welcome to this photogrammetry tutorial. So this is going to explain my workflow for getting assets in from the beginning in the landscape into Unreal Engine. And I'm going to explain how I start out going into the field with the camera, finding the assets and taking the photos of it, and then it's going to lead up to how I get one of these objects into the scene here. So I'm just about to upgrade my asset packages here. So I got a Roman ruins asset package for Unreal Engine, and that's the one you're looking at here. And it's gonna get about 20 new Roman ruin pieces like this that I've been preparing. So I thought at the same time as I'm preparing those, why not make a tutorial about it so you can do the same. I'm also upgrading another package. I have an FBX package, which is a standalone package that does not involve Unreal Engine. It's these same assets, but you can use them in whichever 3D program you want. So it's an FBX mesh and the textures that goes along with it. So all of that's going to be packaged and published on the Fab Marketplace. So I made an overview of what I'm going to go through today in the video I made a couple of days ago. I'm going to link it up in the corner here. And you can take a look at that to see if this is something that you want to invest your time in, because it's going to be quite in-depth, and it's looks like at the moment of editing this that it's going to be around 2 hours long. So hopefully you'll find it useful and you stay with it. But I think I have a great workflow, and I think you will benefit from using that. So without further ado, let's dig into it. Step number one. The first thing you would have to do is, of course, get out to a place where you can find an object that you can scan and take all the photos that you need. Now, I have all these Roman ruin pieces, and I found a lot of them in the same spot. So I got very lucky there. I could get around 80 pieces. And what I do is, for a simple object like this, something around between 50 and 100 images is quite fine. And I just take a small step between each image and just think of the overlap I will get. And there's no need to overdo it. You have to find the balance so you don't take too many images. Now, it never hurts with too many images, of course, but it will drain your time. And if you're not confident of the results you will get and you just continuously take too many images, you will lose time, because I had to do 80 of these, and I couldn't do that if I would take like 300 images per object, and my back would have killed me as well after a while. So here I took around 50 images, and then I bring them into Lightroom, which is step number 2. You got to sort them out in Lightroom or something similar. So in Lightroom I will go over to the develop module, and I set it to, in this case, camera flat, just a flat profile. And if needed, you can also adjust the exposure. So if there's some that the exposure is a bit off, just to bring them into the range so they're kind of similar. It doesn't have to be that exact. Reality Capture can handle it. And then delete all the ones that are crazy blurry, so they're not screwing up your solution. And in case you want, you can also increase the shadows a bit. Now, I tend to not make these like super flat, like completely just get the shadows all the way up and get the highlights all the way down, because I find the solves get better if there's a little bit of contrast in it. You get a bit more detail out and it doesn't fail as often. That's my experience, at least. And since I'm going to save this out now as 16-bit PNGs, I can bring up the shadows in the textures afterwards. So I'd rather do that instead and just keep them looking kind of natural like this. But a good flat profile is nice to have. So export this in 16-bit PNGs, and we're going to go to Reality Capture next. So in Reality Capture we need to load the images. So just click on the folder, navigate to where you saved them, got them here. And I'll go up just see. So I got them here in the folder called images. Select that. Now it's going to say HDR image detected. And I will keep use original. I found the gains you would get from converting them is rather minor if any. I haven't measured it, so I don't know actually, but I have no problems with using 16-bit HDR images. It's fine. And I don't want to create doubles, which is what it does, and it creates a huge mess in my folder structure, especially if you have to move the files around. That's one of the weaknesses of reality capture. It's that the file paths are very hard to maintain. It's only absolute file paths, and if you lose it, you have to relink it, and it can be a huge pain. So let's click Use Original and load them in, and that goes very fast. Now we go to alignment. So if you have a clean reality capture where you haven't tweaked with anything, just click the Align Images. So you got your settings here, but I think the default settings are pretty good, and I think there's only need to tweak these if you don't get the results that you want, if it breaks or something like that. Then there are a few things that you can change. You can easily double this here, max features per image and per megapixel. 10,000, 50,000, you could easily go 20,000, 100,000. That will probably do something. And this here, max feature reprojection error. This one does a lot actually. If you set that to something very high, like 10, it's going to solve a lot more, but you also get a lot more errors that you might have to sculpt out afterwards. But it can be the matter of it solving or not solving. So it could be something you could tweak with. And there are also a few ones here, but we're not going to touch them at all. So with the default settings, I just click Align Images and wait a little bit. There we go. 7 seconds later, it's finished. And we are going to crop it in, and then we're going to generate the mesh. Like so. Then we go over to the mesh model. In the mesh model settings, so we got pretty much you can choose between high detail and normal detail, and the high detail is the one I always use for my images, and the normal detail, it's going to take half the resolution of the high detail image. So in this case I have a 24 megapixel image, and it's then going to half it, so it's going to then be 6 megapixels, which is rather low. You're still going to get a usable object out of it, and it's going to look pretty good. A little bit soft, I think. But this mostly comes into effect if you're using a high megapixel camera. Let's say you got 60 megapixel, then it's going to sample it down to somewhere a little bit above 20 megapixel, and that's a good resolution. So then you could consider using that. But for me, even though I have a high resolution camera, if I use that, I don't have the heart to downsample it. I have to get all the quality I can out of it. And also, I find that it's better to get all the quality in and then decimate it down than to limit yourself with just using half the image. So with that said, this is a 24 megapixel image, and we're going to generate high detail from that. So I click it. And now we wait. This is going to take a couple of minutes, so I will speed this up. Okay, and we're done. And it took around 3 minutes. So let's analyze what we got here now. The mesh is looking good and high detail, I think. Just the right amount of detail we want for an object like this. Seems to be almost no errors. It's going to be missing underneath here and there a little bit. So what we got to do when we export this, we got to sculpt away the base here, of course. Got to cut it off and sculpt in the bottom. So this is a very simple object. It's as simple as it gets. I pretty much only have to remove the bottom and make a little bit of a stone structure underneath, and then it's done. So let's see how big it is. So it comes in at 22.7 million triangles, which is fine for an object like this. Could go even higher, but this will do. So next stage is I will have to put some colors on it. So I'm not going to use the texture at this stage. It comes way later, and I'm just going to colorize it. So this will calculate some vertex color for me. And I'm just going to hit that, and it will take a minute or two. So what this allows me to do when I export it into 3D Coat, which is next, I will have the color information there, which makes it easier if I have to sculpt away some plants sticking out or something like that. I'll see a little bit more what I'm doing. In this case, it's not really that needed because it's that simple, but quite often there will be grass growing and things like that, and you need to find it and get rid of it. So I prefer to put the colors on. And it's finished in 31 seconds, and here we go. That's about it. So now we just got to export it. To export it, you will have to go into the mesh model, find the dense mesh model, and then navigate to your object. In my case, it's this one here. And create an export folder, and I have one here since before, but I'm gonna create this. It's gonna be add tutorial on it, and it's gonna be FBX because that's way I get the colors. If I just choose OBJ, the colors are not going to come in, not in 3D Coat. The colors will be there, and you can open it in other programs, but not in 3D Coat. So FBX is going to have to be fine for now. And in the FBX settings, now this is actually, it's one of those things that, it's another thing that Reality Capture doesn't do very well. It's how the grid system works, the world coordinates. So in Reality Capture itself, it's got one of those set up worlds, so it's like 3D Studio Max and, well, actually like Unreal Engine as well, it's close to that. But all the other programs, Blender, Maya, Houdini, 3D Coat, you name it, they all have Y up. So we got to correct for that. And also the scale is going to be off by quite a lot in this case, actually. So in this case, if scale is set to 1, here it's gonna be, well, if you take it into Houdini, which has meter, then it's gonna be, everything is gonna be completely different. And this is a huge problem. It's actually super annoying, but best is as you go, wherever you export it from, just take notes and try to figure out how it flips and turns in your program, in your software, and then just write it down so you know it for the next time, so you don't lose too much time and sanity of flipping it right when you bring it back into Reality Capture, which we are going to do later on. So here we go. So we got transformation presets. It's Blender and Maya, and that's the ones I go for. There would be others to use as well. You got the default, and you got Unity, Unreal, 3ds Max. But this one is the one that's closest to me. At least what it's going to do, it's going to flip the Z to the Y, but it's still going to be a couple of errors in it. So yeah, bear with me. We'll sort it out. So I just click OK here. And that's it, finished in 18 seconds. Now let's take a look in 3D Coat. Step number 4, sculpting in 3D Coat. Now this is one of my absolute favorite programs. It's the things this one can do, I don't think any other program can do, and it's the voxel sculpting. That's why I really love this program. So we are now going to open the mesh that we exported before, and when you start 3D Coat, it can be kind of confusing because it doesn't behave as normal programs does. It's built up of different rooms. So you got the sculpt room, the paint room, and yeah, you name it, room. And it's a little bit tricky to transfer objects back and from those rooms. So it's a little strange in the beginning. You'll get used to it though. But that's why this startup screen here is so important. Do not click that away. This will help you a lot. So you just got to figure out what are you doing at the moment. And right now we're going to do some surface sculpting. So I'm going to click surface sculpting. And you got little stuff, some things you can load, or you go to file, and we're going to go to file. So in here we're going to go to where we saved it in export. And this org tutorial here, that's the one. And then we just wait. If it's a very dense mesh, it can take a while for it to come in. There is a hard rule here. You can't have more than 100 million polygons to load in one object. Anything above that, it's going to break the machine. So keep that in mind. We're good now because we only got a little bit over 20 million. So we just close these down. And we check what we got. And here we have it. And now you see we got the colors with us as well. So that's pretty neat. So now what we're going to do, we're going to cut this base off here. And you can see here, this is the outliner. So it loads the object here. This one we actually don't need. It's an empty object. Comes in whether you like it or not. Don't know why actually. But there we are with that one. So this S here stands for that we are in surface mode. There are two modes. You got surface mode and you got voxel mode. Volumetric mode. So let's start in surface mode. This is just your average standard mesh with polygons. And this works fine to do a lot of operations with. So I'm going to do a few here now. If I middle space bar, I get up the menu for the tools and I click the cutoff. You get the same tools here on the side. And at the top here we can choose either the lasso tool or we can choose the drag rectangle tool. So we're going to do that. So what this is going to do, we're going to drag out a rectangle and then it's going to cut it off. But before we do that, we're going to switch over to ortho view. So now everything becomes flat, which helps a lot with the cutting here, or else you get like a perspective in the cutting. So here, let's just try it immediately. Just drag a rectangle and it's going to cut it off. As easy as that. So this works very good in surface mode. And in surface mode, used to be my favorite, but they have made so many improvements with the volumetric mode that now sculpting in voxels is the way to go. Just a couple of years ago that wasn't that good. It was a kind of a clunky experience, but the recent improvements are really something else. So if you haven't tried this for a couple of years, you could try it again. You'll be pleasantly surprised. It's really nice. So let's cut this off here as well, see what happens. So you can see this goes pretty fast, and I actually don't have to turn this one into voxels if I don't want to. But since for me it's the preferred way, I'm going to do it anyways. So let's say we cut this off here, and we could just continue now, just cleaning it up and cutting it all away, and then we'd be pretty much done with it. But we are going to voxelize it. Before that then, though, we are going to separate disconnected parts. So this is just going to clean out floaters. So if I do that, size of pieces to delete, I go to 10,000. So this is polygon clusters that are 10,000 or lower. They're all going to be deleted. And if there are clusters above 10,000, they will all be separated into a little list here on the right, but we don't have any of that. So this will take a little bit, but not too much. I like to drag it out like that and just delete the old one. And like so. So now all the floaters are gone. So in order to create, turn this into a voxel object, we just click the little S here and we'll turn it into V. So now you see by default it will turn it into 17 million voxels, but we want a little bit more. It's good to oversample it a bit. So I'm going to type 50 million. 50 million and click OK. So this my system can handle anything around 100 million without any problems, and 50 million is going to be quite easy to sculpt with. So I do recommend go up a bit so you don't lose quality between the conversions, because it is a conversion and it turns it into a volumetric material, so you are going to lose a few things. And if you have like a lot of thin objects, this might not be the thing you want to do. Like you got strands or grass or some cables or something. Voxelizing it might not be the best way, because it doesn't handle super thin objects that well. Okay, so it's done. And you can now see here to the left you got a new set of tools here. So these are the voxel sculpting tools now. But we're going to continue cutting things up. So press that again, go to cut off. And now I'm going to switch over to the lasso tool here. And I'm just going to clean up this here. So it actually goes super fast. Once it's voxels like this, it's actually really quite fast to cut things up. And you can see the speed is also pretty nice. Okay. So I'm going to speed run this. Once it's cleaned up, we do the next step. Okay, it's done. So the bottom is cut off, and the next step here would be to sculpt this in so it looks like the top there. So we got some tools for that. My favorite is right here. It's in the clay engine. So you got something called the wet clay here. I really like that one. Now I got you can put different alphas on top of them. Alphas is, you can see the thing in the middle there. So I got some brushes here. It would normally just have this, which works fine. But I prefer to have a little alpha there. You also then have, if you click that, you get edit brush parameters. If you want to use alpha on this, just a quick tip here, that you got to click in use current alpha down here, or else it's not going to accept alphas. In case you want to get the brush that I'm using here. Let's click that off. So now it's just a matter of sculpting this in. So control to go minus. You can see now I have like a drag dot thing there, which is not what I want. So I'm going to change that to a normal brush. And you can see how it kind of erodes the whole thing away. Shift will smooth, which works very good here as well. And then we just erode. So this is basically how I do the fixing here. And then once I level this out, I'm going to use some alphas. Actually, it's a VDMs, vector displacement maps. I'm going to create the bottom on that. So now I'm just going to sculpt this in, and I'm going to speed run this as well. Okay, that's going to be good enough. So I've smoothed it out along the edges there, make it blend in as good as I can, and now we are gonna stamp out the ground. So I have here a special Rome folder, which is just VDMs that I've snatched from my other models. So this is what you can stamp out. Now the thing is, There are some you get from the beginning, like these here, but they're not really that good. There are a few others as well. But it's really super easy to make these yourself. I'm going to show you how to do it. But first, I'll just demonstrate what this is all about. So what you got to do in order to get it to work, so you're going to drag these out. It's like you do in ZBrush when you drag out the alphas there. So it's the same thing here. But we're going to go down to what says surface here and click the surface extrude. And then go back to this Rome folder here and choose something. We're going to choose this one. Looks good. So you can see that would be the representation of it. We're going to change this mode here to, we got these two here. This is the drag dot. It drags it out and scales it. I'll show what that looks like. See here, drags it out a bit. I will increase the depth so it's 100%. Now the thing is with the drag dot, it works pretty good, but once it gets big, it starts getting a bit sluggish. And the last thing is that it can just pop a little bit, and it kind of drags it out over the whole objects, and that's not nice. This time it worked. So I tried to use that one a bit carefully, but there is another one, and it's this one here. This is just stamping, so you kind of control it with the size of your marker here, and then you just click and wait a little bit, and it's going to create that. Like so. So the bigger these stamps are, the slower it's going to go. If it's kind of small, this size here, it's really fine, it's fast. So I'm just using this here. And then I have a few of these I can just mix it up with if I want. So this is how I do the undersides. So now I'm just going to work all the way through here, just so the edges will be looking good. And for the edges I can actually go down to, let's say, 60%. Just mix it up so it doesn't look too repetitive. Even though it's the underside and it's probably not going to be that visible, and but you still got to take care that it doesn't look bad. So by just doing this, it's quite easy to get a good sculpt in. So I'm just going to do this for the whole thing, and I'll speed run it from here. Okay, that's it. The underside is now sculpted the way I want it. So I'm just going to save this. Okay, you can also click away the color here. Sometimes that can make it easier to see. So I'm just going to click that. I'll show what that looks like. We can see how it blends. Right now it's a little bit hard to see if it looks good underneath here. I think that's good enough. But here we can see we got this underside here, and that also needs to be fixed. Like this, yeah. So to fix that, go up to the wet clay again, shift the tool to the brush. And just gonna be smoothing this out, so get rid of the hexagons. And then I'm just gonna stamp there as well. Just see if there's any other spots that needs a little smooth work. See, here's a little bit. It always pays off to patrol it like this a little bit. So what you're looking for, except for these smooth parts, there can sometimes be what I call it sausages or Klein bottles. So this would be like little loops that goes out with a hole in them, and they are no good. They will cause a huge problem when you try to UV map this later and you have to remesh it. So those are a huge no-no. A simple mesh like this is not going to have it, but if you have something very complicated, you are going to get some of these loops. There are techniques to get rid of those, but I'll show you that when I do a more advanced model in the future. So here we just gotta, it's a decently clean model. See, even with the 50 images, we get pretty much all the detail we want from one of these. And the little errors I have is barely an inconvenience, I think. Here we go. So you can see you can do quite a lot of fixing afterwards. That is important to know. Also know your limits, because sometimes it can be very time consuming to fix things. It is of course easiest, the better scan you have, the easier it's going to be, the less time you spend on this stage. So it's always preferable to get as good a scan as possible out in the field, because this is not really fun to sit and do. Okay, I think that's it. So we're just going to do a little bit of an extrude there. Go back to the extrude. Brushes. Yeah, I think that's good. And I'll put it down to 40, because we just want a little bit of a just a little bit of noise in there, so it doesn't look let's see, doesn't look too bad. Undo. Yeah, like so. I think that will be good enough. All right. Now then, let's see if we can create our own VDMs. So in order to create VDMs, I have to actually duplicate my my object and turn it into a surface. I found that lately it works best in surface mode and not in the volumetric mode. So I will just create a duplicate of this, click that little button, and it will turn it into a surface. It is a bit unfortunate. It used to work very well, and but as of late something has gone a little bit wrong. I hope they fix it very soon, but this works as well. So then you just go down to pick and paste, and you drag it out. You get this little marker here. Now you have to be a little bit sensitive and not, it is slightly sluggish, so no big movements here, and just wait for it. So once you find something that you like, you just click once, you wait a bit for it to think, don't move around too much. You can see here now that it has created one there. So what we need to do is we go to our brushes folder and we navigate to where we want to save this map. We want it in our Rome folder. And then I click the Create VDM Alpha. And now you can see here, if I hover over that one, it's the one we created there. So mark down what it's called. It's called VD54612. It's good to know. So because it has a tendency to sort this out. That next time you open it, it might be somewhere in the middle here, and then you don't know which one it was you created particularly. But that's as easy as it is. And now you can just go down to your extrude, or we can go to our volumetric again, turn that one on, turn the surface off, go down to extrude, go back to the brushes, go back to the Rome folder. And this is what I mean. Now you need to remember what it was called, because now it's somewhere else. There we go, that's the one. So this is the one we did. And if I drag it out like that, set it to 100%. Stamp it down. There we go. Created a pretty much exact copy of what you had up there. So it's extremely powerful, and once you have it on your fingertips like this, it's really nice. I'm going to undo those two. And we're going to wrap this up. So I'm going to delete that surface we did there. And now we're just going to export this. So the next step is that once we've sculpted this, we are going to take it into ZBrush for the remesh. In order to do that, we are going to need one low-res mesh and one high-res mesh. So a few things I like to do just before. Since this is a volume, now, like I said, this is a very simple object, so not much has gone wrong with it as it is now. But one good practice to do is to click these fill voids. Because sometimes if you have, well, sometimes you can left little, we can call them air bubbles inside of the mesh. And we need to fill those in so that they are not there, and it creates like a little droplet that, well, it's going to show up when you're doing your UV mapping. But that's things that it happens. It kind of creates this billabong of a little left behind sausage in there. If you're careful, it doesn't happen that much, but it can be tiny ones as well. But this just makes sure that it's now completely filled in. There are no air bubbles inside. And then we are going to export it. So first we're going to export the high-res mesh. So you just right click, click export, export selected objects, and we go down to the 3D code. I will create a new folder called exports. I will name it high-res. Now we're going to get a dialog window coming up asking us if we want to decimate it or not. And we're going to click don't decimate for this one. We want everything. This will take a while, so I'm speeding it up. It's done, and now we're going to export the low res as well. Do the same thing, just name it low res. We need something around 5 million polygons. So let's see, I can choose the percentage I want to decimate it with, so a little bit higher. Let's go for 87. There we go, that's good. And now it's going to decimate, and then we're ready. Now, I often include a smoothing path. I will go over the brush and smooth this. Today I might feel lucky and don't do it, but normally I would always smooth this out. Just to avoid what I mentioned before, these kind of Klein bottles and things. But this is such a simple mesh. split, there will probably not be any. There we go, it's done. So now we're going to jump into ZBrush and do a remeshing in there.